Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the command deck of the ESS Hyperion, Earth's first true deep space carrier, watching the holographic display of what should have been a routine patrol of the Kuiper Belt. The massive ship's quantum sensors had picked up something impossible, a tear in space-time itself. Multiple contacts emerging from the anomaly. Admiral, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his fingers dancing across the neural interface, energy signatures unlike anything in our database. The tear widened, and through it came ships, dozens of them. Their designs defied human engineering principles, all curved organic lines and pulsing bioluminescence. But what caught Chen's attention wasn't their alien nature. It was the obvious damage they'd sustained. Several vessels trailed debris and vented atmosphere into space. "They're broadcasting something," Communications Officer Park announced. It's in English, sir." Chen's eyebrows rose. "Put it through." To any receiving vessels, a voice crackled through the bridge speakers, somehow both alien and deeply frightened. "This is Ambassador Xal of the Galactic Concordat. We seek immediate asylum. The Nexus follows close behind. Please, help us." Before Chen could respond, another spatial tear formed. The ships emerging from this one were different. Angular, metallic, and bristling with weapons. They moved with perfect coordination, like parts of a single organism. New contacts opening fire on the refugee vessels, Rodriguez reported calmly, but Chen could hear the tension in his voice. Chen had trained for first contact scenarios her entire career, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Watching alien refugees being gunned down by what appeared to be their pursuers, while humanity's most advanced warship hung in the balance. The decision took her less than a second. Battle stations, all hands to combat positions. Launch our drone screen and position us between those refugees and their attackers. She opened a channel to the fleet. "This is Admiral Chen to all ESS vessels in the Kuiper Belt. Converge on my position. We are engaging hostile forces in defense of civilian ships." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as her crew responded. The Hyperion's massive frame shuddered as its electromagnetic catapults launched squadrons of combat drones. Its point defense grid came online, and its main gun, a massive coil gun running the length of the ship, began charging. "Admiral," Park said hesitantly, "are you sure about this? We don't know anything about these aliens or their conflict." Chen's eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. "I know enough. I see civilians being attacked by what looks like a mechanized battle fleet. I see children dying. Sometimes, Park, knowing right from wrong is all you need." The pursuing ships, the Nexus forces, seemed to notice the Hyperion for the first time. Their perfect formation shifted, several vessels breaking off to analyze this new threat. "They're scanning us," Rodriguez reported. "Heavy electromagnetic probes. Wait, something's trying to access our systems." Chen smiled grimly. "And that's why we still use hardened systems and analog backups. Let them try to hack us. Weapons, target the lead vessel. Show them humanity's answer to their aggression." The Hyperion's main gun spoke, sending a 20-ton tungsten rod accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed straight through the Nexus formation. The shot tore through their advanced shields like they weren't there and split one of the massive ships in two. For a moment, everything stopped. The Nexus ships froze in space, as if processing this unexpected development. The refugee vessels ceased their panicked flight, watching in apparent amazement. Then all hell broke loose. The Nexus ships opened fire with energy weapons far beyond human understanding. But they'd made a crucial mistake. They'd assumed humanity's technology would match their own. Instead, they found their advanced energy weapons splashing harmlessly off the Hyperion's meters-thick armor of layered ceramics and metamaterials. "Return fire, all batteries," Chen ordered. "Launch all remaining drones, and get me a channel to those refugee ships. Tell them to get behind us. The ES Hyperion stands ready to defend them." As her crew carried out her orders, Shen watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction. More human ships were arriving. Destroyers, cruisers, and battleships, all built with the same philosophy of durability over complexity. The Nexus vessels were more advanced in almost every way, but they'd never encountered enemies who built their ships like mobile fortresses. "Admiral," Park called out, "Ambassador Xal is hailing us again." "Put them through." "Human vessel." The alien voice seemed shocked. "Your technology. It is primitive by our standards, and yet you stand against the Nexus. Why would you risk yourselves for strangers?" Chen's response was immediate. "Because it's right. Because every sapient being deserves to live free from persecution. And because humanity has dreamed of meeting other intelligent life for centuries, we're not about to let our first contact end in a massacre." The battle raged for hours. The Nexus ships were faster, more agile, and possessed weapons that could have vaporized cities. But humanity's fleet was built to take punishment, and their simple, kinetic weapons proved devastatingly effective against enemies who'd evolved beyond the need to defend against them. In the end, the Nexus fleet retreated, leaving behind several destroyed vessels, and a mystery. Why had such advanced ships struggled against humanity's relatively primitive fleet? As the adrenaline of battle faded, Chen realized that humanity had just been thrust onto an interstellar stage, and their first act had been to bloody the nose of one of its biggest bullies. "Admiral," Park said quietly, "the refugee ships are asking permission to approach Earth. They say they have a warning about what's coming." Chen nodded slowly, watching the damaged alien vessels limp toward her ship under escort. "Tell Earth Command to prepare for visitors. And tell them," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "tell them humanity just joined a war we didn't know was being fought." The unlikely alliance. The United Earth Defense Council chamber hummed with tension as Ambassador Xal's hologram towered over the assembled military and political leaders. The alien diplomat's crystalline form shimmered as it projected images of devastated worlds, entire civilizations reduced to ash by the Nexus. 57 species. Xal's translated voice resonated through the chamber. That's how many the Nexus has eliminated in the past decade alone. They consume technology, adapt it, and use it against its creators. Every advancement we've made has only made them stronger. Admiral Chen sat at the front row, watching Earth's leaders pale at the footage of entire planets being systematically dismantled by swarms of Nexus ships. But she noticed something the others missed, a pattern in the destruction. "Ambassador," she interrupted, standing up. "In all this footage, I don't see the Nexus ever adapting to kinetic weapons or physical armor. Why is that?" Xal's crystalline form shifted. A gesture Chen had learned indicated surprise. "They've never needed to. Energy weapons and shields have been the standard for all spacefaring races for millennia. Your primitive approach is unprecedented." The word primitive caused several council members to bristle, but Chen smiled. "Sometimes the old ways work best. You said they adapt to technology. But what about pure physics? Can they adapt to a tungsten rod moving at relativistic speeds?" General Santos, Earth's highest-ranking military officer, leaned forward. "Admiral Chen has a point. Our first engagement proved our primitive technology effective. Perhaps that's exactly what this fight needs, something so basic it's revolutionary." "There's more," Chen continued. "Ambassador, your ships rely heavily on automated systems, correct?" "Of course," Xal replied. "All advanced civilizations do. Manual control would be impossibly inefficient." Chen exchanged glances with Santos. "But that's exactly why the Nexus can hack and corrupt your systems so easily. They speak the same digital language. Our ships still use human pilots, analog backups, and hardened systems, specifically because we feared cyber warfare. What's outdated to you might be our greatest advantage." The chamber erupted in discussion. Earth's leaders began to see what Chen already understood. Humanity's technological limitations might be their greatest strength in this war. Over the next weeks, An unprecedented exchange began. Concordat engineers marveled at the simplicity and durability of human shipbuilding, while Earth's scientists studied alien technology with wonder. But the most valuable exchange wasn't technological, it was tactical. In the Hyperion's training simulator, Chen watched as Concordat pilots struggled to adapt to manual controls. "You're thinking too much," she told them. "Your computers calculate perfect solutions, but combat isn't about perfection. It's about good enough, right now." Meanwhile, human crews learned to integrate alien sensor technology with their own systems, creating hybrid ships that combined the best of both worlds. They replaced vulnerable automated systems with human operators, sacrificing efficiency for security against Nexus infiltration. The Concordat's Admiral Venn, a being of living metal, observed human combat drills with increasing interest. "Your species intentionally trains for system failures, for worst-case scenarios. We train to survive when everything goes wrong," Chen explained, watching her crew perform maintenance in complete darkness. "Because in real combat, everything will go wrong." But time was running out. Nexus scout ships had been detected at the edge of the solar system, probing humanity's defenses. They were learning, adapting, preparing for a major assault. In the council chamber, Chen presented her radical proposal. "The Nexus expects high technology, perfect tactics, and predictable responses. So let's give them none of that. We combine Concordat speed and sensors with human durability and unpredictability. We fight dirty." "Dirty?" Sal asked, unfamiliar with the term. "It means we don't play by the expected rules," Chen smiled grimly. "The Nexus adapts to patterns, so we give them chaos instead. Random attacks, fake retreats, ships that play dead only to strike from behind. We fight like our ancestors did, with cunning and deception." General Santos stood. "The Nexus thinks they're facing another predictable, automated opponent. Instead, they'll face humans doing what we do best, improvising, adapting, and fighting with everything we've got." The vote was unanimous. Earth would join the Concordat, not as junior partners, but as equals. Humanity would bring their primitive warfare to the stars, and the Nexus would learn that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most difficult to counter. As the combined fleet assembled in orbit, Chen stood on the Hyperion's bridge, watching human and alien ships training together. They were an odd sight. Sleek Concordat vessels practicing formation with Earth's blocky, armored warships. But together, they represented something the Nexus had never faced: the perfect combination of advanced technology and primitive warfare. "All ships report ready," her communications officer announced. Chen nodded. "Send word to the fleet. Operation Blackout begins in 12 hours. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity can do." Operation Blackout. The void between Mars and Jupiter had become humanity's killing field. Admiral Chen watched from the Hyperion's bridge as the combined fleet executed a strategy that would have seemed insane just months ago. Earth ships, their hulls painted in light-absorbing metamaterials, drifted silent and dark among the asteroid belt. Concordat vessels, with their superior engines, had scattered sensor drones across millions of kilometers of space. Nexus fleet approaching the outer marker, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. "Numbers are significant. Over 300 ships." Chen allowed herself a grim smile. "Right into our trap. Status of Operation Blackout. All ships report ready. Concordat quantum entanglement communications are functioning. We can coordinate without radio emissions." This was humanity's answer to the Nexus's technological superiority, fighting from the dark. No active sensors, no radio communications, nothing for their advanced systems to detect or hack. Just cold ships playing dead among the asteroids, waiting. "The Nexus expects us to fight like the Concordat," Chen said to her bridge crew. "They expect energy weapons, shields, and automated systems. Instead, they're going to learn how humanity fought when we were still sailing wooden ships on Earth's oceans." The Nexus fleet moved deeper into the asteroid field, their formation perfect and precise. Too precise. Their ships avoided the larger rocks with mathematical efficiency, never realizing that some of those asteroids were actually camouflage Earth vessels. All ships. Chen transmitted through the quantum link. Execute Phase 1. The trap was sprung. Dozens of Earth's asteroid ships fired their maneuvering thrusters simultaneously, hurling themselves directly at the Nexus formation. At the same time, actual asteroids, previously fitted with human mining charges, detonated in carefully calculated patterns. The perfect Nexus formation shattered as ships scattered to avoid both the kamikaze attacks and the expanding debris clouds. Their advanced sensors, overwhelmed by thousands of high-velocity fragments, couldn't distinguish real threats from debris. Phase 2, Chen ordered. Show them why you don't corner a human. Concordat ships suddenly appeared from their hiding spots, their advanced engines allowing them to accelerate at speeds that would have killed human crews. But instead of using their energy weapons, they launched salvos of primitive human-designed missiles, simple rockets carrying nothing more complex than shaped nuclear charges. The Nexus ships responded as expected, their energy shields easily swatting away the missiles. But that was the plan. While their shields were occupied with the missile swarm, Earth's ships emerged from hiding, their rail guns speaking with devastating effect. Multiple direct hits, Rodriguez reported with satisfaction. Their shields are optimized against energy weapons. They can't adapt fast enough to stop kinetic penetrators. The battle devolved into chaos, exactly as planned. Human ships fought like ancient submarines, going dark between shots, appearing where least expected. Concordat vessels used their superior maneuverability to harry and distract, drawing Nexus fire away from their slower but harder-hitting human allies. But the Nexus was learning, adapting. Several Earth ships were destroyed as the enemy began to predict their hiding spots. A Concordat cruiser vanished in a flash of light as 3 Nexus vessels concentrated their fire. They're catching on, Rodriguez warned. Starting to see through our tricks. Chen had expected this. Signal the fleet. Begin Phase 3. This was the riskiest part of the plan, something that had made even the Concordat admirals nervous. The combined fleet began to retreat, but not in any logical direction. Each ship picked a random vector, creating a 3-dimensional scatter pattern that defied tactical analysis. The Nexus fleet, programmed to recognize and exploit patterns, hesitated. Their perfect formation wavered as their tactical computers tried to predict where the Allied fleet was regrouping. But there was no pattern to analyze, no logic to follow. They're splitting up, Rodriguez reported, trying to cover all possible rally points. And that's their mistake, Chen smiled. All ships, execute final phase. Show them why you never split your forces against humans. The Allied fleet's scattered retreat suddenly transformed into a multi-vector attack. Ships that seemed to be fleeing randomly now converged on isolated groups of Nexus vessels, overwhelming them with concentrated fire from multiple directions. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was clear. The Nexus fleet, for the first time in its existence, had been outmaneuvered and outfought. Not by superior technology, but by human unpredictability and Concordat precision working in concert. As the remaining Nexus ships retreated in disarray, Chen allowed herself to relax slightly. Damage report. 12 Earth ships lost, 8 Concordat vessels destroyed, Rodriguez replied solemnly. But preliminary counts show over 60 Nexus ships destroyed and at least that many heavily damaged. A victory, Chen said quietly, but they'll be back. And next time, they'll be ready for these tactics. She stared at the tactical display, watching the debris of battle drift among the asteroids. They had bloodied the Nexus's nose, proved they could be beaten. But Chen knew this was just the beginning. The real test would come when the Nexus returned with countermeasures against human tactics. Send word to Earth Command, she ordered. Tell them Operation Blackout was a success, but we need to start planning the next phase immediately. The Nexus adapts, so must we. The price of victory, 3 weeks after Operation Blackout, Admiral Chen stood in the wreckage of what had once been the Concordat colony of New Haven. The Nexus's response to their defeat had been swift and brutal, not against Earth's military targets, but against vulnerable civilian worlds. 7 colonies hit in the past week, General Santos reported, his hologram flickering in Chen's tactical display. They're not trying to hold territory anymore. This is pure revenge. Chen walked through the ruins of the colony's main dome, her environment suit crunching through shattered glass. The Nexus had adapted their tactics, just as she'd feared. Instead of engaging the combined fleet directly, they'd split into smaller groups, striking soft targets before disappearing back into deep space. They're learning from us, Chen said bitterly. Using our own guerrilla tactics against civilian targets. We taught them too well. Ambassador Xal's crystalline form shimmered beside her, the alien diplomat insisting on witnessing the devastation firsthand. The Nexus has never shown this level of tactical adaptation before. They've always been predictable, relying on overwhelming force. This is different. Chen stopped at what had been a school, now nothing but twisted metal and broken dreams. They're evolving. We forced them to think differently, and now they're applying that learning in the worst possible way. Back aboard the Hyperion, Chen met with her command staff and their Concordat counterparts. The mood was grim as they reviewed footage from the recent attacks. Look at their attack patterns, Lieutenant Rodriguez pointed out. They're mimicking our asteroid field tactics, using debris clouds as cover. They've even started using kinetic weapons. Not just any kinetic weapons, Commander Park added. They're copying our designs, but building them with their superior technology. These aren't simple rail guns anymore. They're accelerating projectiles to speeds we can barely track. The Nexus had taken humanity's primitive concepts and refined them with advanced alien science. The result was devastating. Weapons that combined human ingenuity with computational perfection. But Chen noticed something else in the attack footage. They're still using standard targeting protocols, she mused. All that adaptation, but they're still thinking like machines. Show me the New Haven attack again. The holographic display replayed the colony's final moments. Chen watched intently as Nexus ships systematically destroyed key infrastructure. There, freeze it. The image stopped, showing a Nexus vessel adjusting its position with perfect precision to target a power facility. They copied our tactics, but not our thinking, Chen said slowly. They execute random patterns because their algorithms tell them to, not because they understand why unpredictability works. They're like children mimicking adults. They copy the actions but miss the underlying principles. Admiral Venn, the Concordat's tactical expert, moved his metallic form closer to the display. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we use their perfect logic against them. They think they've adapted to our chaos, but they're still following patterns, just more complex ones. We need to think even more irrationally. More irrationally. Santos' hologram looked skeptical. Admiral, we've already pushed the boundaries of conventional tactics. Chen smiled grimly. Then we abandon conventional tactics entirely. The Nexus expects us to protect our colonies, so we expose them. They expect us to defend, so we attack. They expect us to retreat when overwhelmed, so we charge straight in. That's insane, Park protested. We'd lose half the fleet. No, Xal interrupted, their crystalline form pulsing with excitement. I understand now. The Nexus cannot comprehend truly irrational behavior because it defies their core programming. They can simulate chaos, but they cannot understand sacrifice, or desperate gambles, or suicide charges that shouldn't work but do. Chen nodded. Exactly. We've been teaching them how to fight like humans, but we haven't forced them to think like humans. Time to change that. Over the next hours, Chen outlined her plan. It was dangerous, borderline suicidal, and completely contrary to every principle of space warfare. It would require perfect coordination between human and Concordat forces, and it would absolutely result in heavy casualties. But as she explained the strategy, she saw understanding dawn in both human and alien faces. This wasn't just about winning battles anymore. It was about forcing the Nexus to face something its logical mind couldn't process. "We'll need volunteers," she finished. "What I'm proposing. I won't order anyone to participate." "You won't need to," Santos replied. "Every ship in the Earth fleet will volunteer. You know that." Ven's metallic form shifted in what Chen had learned was their version of a nod. "The Concordat fleet will stand with our human allies. We have seen enough death. If madness is what it takes to end this war, then let us be mad together." Chen looked around the room at her fellow officers, human and alien alike. They had come so far from that first desperate battle in the Kuiper Belt. They had learned to fight together, to trust each other, to blend their strengths and cover their weaknesses. Now they would learn to be crazy together. "Very well," she said. "Let's show the Nexus what happens when you push humanity too far. Begin preparations for Operation Murphy's Law." Humanity's finest hour. Operation Murphy's Law began with surrender. Or at least, what looked like surrender to the Nexus's logical minds. The combined human Concordat fleet gathered at Earth, apparently abandoning their defensive positions across multiple systems. It was an invitation the Nexus couldn't resist, a chance to eliminate both their greatest threat and their most puzzling opponent in a single strike. Admiral Chen watched from the Hyperion's bridge as the largest Nexus fleet ever recorded emerged from hyperspace. Over 1,000 ships drawn by the prospect of humanity's destruction. "They took the bait," she transmitted to the fleet. "Now show them why you never corner a human being." The battle that followed would be studied for centuries to come, not for its tactical brilliance, but for its sheer, calculated insanity. Earth ships charged straight into the Nexus formation, not firing their weapons but broadcasting on all frequencies. Music. Everything from classical symphonies to heavy metal-filled space, overwhelming Nexus communication channels with what their systems could only interpret as nonsense. Then the Concordat ships joined in, but instead of their usual precise movements, they mimicked the worst pilots in their training simulations. Ships spun and tumbled, their paths so erratic that even their allies couldn't predict them. The Nexus's targeting computers, designed to find patterns, began to glitch as they tried to track what appeared to be a fleet of drunken pilots. "Their formation is breaking down," Rodriguez reported with barely contained glee. "They can't maintain unit cohesion when none of our ships are where their predictive algorithms say they should be." Chen nodded grimly. "Begin Phase 2. Show them true chaos." The human fleet split into smaller groups, each acting independently and apparently irrationally. Some ships seemed to flee, drawing Nexus vessels into pursuit. Others appeared to malfunction, drifting helplessly. Still others engaged in what looked like suicidal attacks. But there was method in the madness. Each seemingly random action was part of a larger plan, not to win through superior firepower or tactics, but to force the Nexus to face something its logical mind couldn't process: true unpredictability. The Concordat ships added to the confusion, using their advanced technology in ways their designers never intended. They created false sensor readings, making single ships appear as fleets and fleets appear as debris. They transmitted contradictory data, forcing Nexus ships to constantly recalibrate their targeting systems. The Nexus fleet began to show signs of strain. Ships collided as they tried to avoid attacks that weren't real. Formation lines broke as vessels received conflicting data about friend and foe. Their perfect coordination, their greatest strength, became their weakness as confusion spread through their network. "They're trying to adapt," Park announced, "but their adaptations are making things worse. They're starting to fire on their own ships." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "They're learning the wrong lessons. Every time they think they've figured out our pattern, we change it. They can't predict us because there's nothing to predict." The battle reached its climax when Chen ordered the execution of what she dubbed the Murphy Gambit. Every ship in the combined fleet suddenly cut power, appearing to suffer catastrophic system failures. The Nexus, sensing victory, moved in for the kill. That's when the trap was sprung. The dead ships came alive, their weapons blazing at point-blank range. Earth's primitive kinetic weapons proved devastating at such close quarters, while Concordat energy weapons found gaps in hastily raised shields. But the true killing blow wasn't physical, it was digital. As the Nexus ships tried to process this impossible situation, their network began to break down. Ships stopped coordinating, began acting independently, their group consciousness fragmenting under the strain of trying to understand tactics that defied logic. Their network is collapsing, Rodriguez reported. The hive mind is breaking apart. Without their perfect coordination, the Nexus ships became individual units, powerful but uncoordinated. And in ship-to-ship combat, nothing could match the combination of human intuition and Concordat technology. The battle lasted hours, but its outcome was never in doubt once the Nexus network fractured. Individual ships fought on, but they were no match for crews who had trained to think independently, to make decisions without perfect information, to trust their instincts when logic failed. In the end, the mighty Nexus fleet was reduced to scattered groups of confused vessels, trying to fight as individuals when they had never been designed to do so. The combined fleet hunted them down methodically, showing that they could fight with precision when needed. As the last Nexus ship fell silent, Chen looked around her bridge at her exhausted but triumphant crew. Humans and aliens working together, proving that sometimes the best way to fight the future was with lessons from the past. "Send word to Earth and the Concordat," she ordered. Tell them that humanity's finest hour came when we taught the galaxy that not everything can be predicted, calculated, or controlled. Sometimes, the only way to win is to embrace chaos." In the years that followed, the legend of Operation Murphy's Law grew. It became a cornerstone of military doctrine, a reminder that technology alone didn't win wars. The Concordat changed too, learning from their human allies that efficiency wasn't everything, that sometimes the best solution was the one no logical mind would consider. And if other threats emerged from the depths of space, they would find a humanity that had grown stronger through adversity, a Concordat that had learned to think beyond logic, and an alliance ready to face whatever the galaxy threw at them. Together, they had proved that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't technology, or numbers, or even perfect coordination. It was the ability to embrace chaos, to think the unthinkable, and to do the impossible. It was, in short, humanity's gift to the stars.